Let's see. There we go. Well, we just did an introduction, so really there's not much more to say. That was a pretty thorough introduction, Anya. Thanks very much. Here's some other pictures of Kyle and I that you can see for your viewing pleasure before we move on. Kyle and I have worked together a long time. We're good friends. We travel the country doing restorative justice trainings for schools, but also other organizations and groups in the community. Restorative justice, as you'll see later today, it's not just something just for schools, it's for anyone really in our community. And we like to start out with a quote as an opening. It's a way to create an intentional space, which is what restorative justice is about. And it's about creating a space for dialogue with intention. So today our quote is, "There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about." And that's Margaret Wheatley. So we'll start with that quote and talk about our agenda. Let's see. So for our agenda, we just did our opening. We're going to have a check-in activity in a minute. This will be interactive at times. We'll be putting you in breakout rooms and occasionally asking you to put some words in the chat, and we'll open up the chat for that. We'll do a check-in. We're going to do an activity, a fun activity. Hopefully you'll find it fun. It's good to connect before content. And then we're going to get into RJ philosophy and practice, give you a chance to make meaning of that and close. And that'll pretty much what we have time for today. It'll be a pretty high level balcony view of restorative justice. And hopefully you'll find it really meaningful and relevant to you. And Kyle, did you want to say anything, introduce yourself or anything?
Just good evening, human person leaders, zombies out there. I feel like I'm back in COVID times. I would love to see everybody in person, but one day we will see you all. But let's get the party started.
Okay. All right. So, Jake, we are going to put people in breakouts now, 2 people each, breakouts of 2 people for 4 minutes. And we're going to give you a chance to speak with each other in these breakout rooms. And what we want you to share with each other is your name, where you are in the world, and where did you learn about community? When you think about community, what comes up for you? Where did you learn about it? And so we're going to give you about 4 minutes to do this once you're in the breakouts. And so, Jake, if you could do that, that would be awesome. And then we'll bring you back after 4 minutes. Feel free to write in the chat where you learned about community. Already have a couple people have written in there. Summer camp. Yeah. Summer camp. Yeah. Row houses in Baltimore. All right. Let's see. Is Kyle back in yet?
Yes, sir, I am.
Can't see you. I think I'm spotlit. That's probably why. Oh, Philadelphia, right on. That's where I'm from originally. There he is. So what we're going to do now is, wow, this is great. Look at everybody's, what they're writing in the chat. Thank you for doing that. We're going to right now play a little game, just something for us to connect. Now that you just were able to connect with each other or 1 or 2 other people in the chat, we're going to connect a little bit, all of us together. We're going to play this game called, what's it called, Kyle?
It's called Wheel of Opinions.
Yes.
So what you all are going to do basically is we're going to put a spin wheel up in the front. There you go. I am going to, based on whatever number it hits, I'm going to read something specific. And you all are going to either write in the chat or take your mic off mute. This is a form of healthy chaos. And so it doesn't matter who's speaking at once or another time or someone speaking one at a time. We just like a little bit of chaos because the world is chaotic and there's good chaos and bad chaos. And this is going to be a positive chaos. So once David spins the wheel, I will read the first prompt. Number 4. So the wheel of opinion says, what is your opinion of pineapple on pizza? Write in the chat or take your mic off mute.
Love it. Love it.
It's
Love it.
disgusting.
Yeah.
It's totally
Not my
disgusting.
favorite.
Never try it.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Sounds
Never,
good.
ever.
Bad idea. Why not?
Never had it.
All right, ready for next one?
Yes, sir. Let it roll. All right, number 5. This is for everybody who has a cell phone out there. Are you Android or are you iPhone?
iPhone.
iPhone.
Android.
iPhone.
iPhone.
Crazy that there's really only 2 choices. All right, spinning the wheel.
Thank you. I appreciate the applause. Number 1. What is your opinion on sleeping with socks on?
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
Feet so warm.
Yes.
No.
Love it.
That's my feet are cold.
I like when someone says in emergencies. That's a good.
Mm. Number 3.
All right, number 3. What is your opinion on the tipping prompt? So the little iPad screen prompt on a tablet screen at a cafe or a restaurant.
Never seen it.
Don't know what that is. Anything about it. As in, to give a tip.
Sometimes annoying.
Yeah, I don't like them, but I get 50 cents.
Helps.
What is it? No idea what they are.
It's to give the tip.
I don't either.
I don't have it.
Spread the wealth.
Whoever said 50-cent tip, that's amazing.
What's that? What number is that? 6?
6.
All right.
I was showing too.
Number 6. What is your opinion on making small talk with the dentist while you're getting your teeth cleaned?
Not a good idea.
Did that today.
It is.
It's
a bad idea.
Ridiculous.
Country
music.
No.
Are you gonna talk
They
to
can
me?
Okay, as long as
I
you're not-
don't want it.
All right, Kyle, there's one more. Hit it. Number 2.
Number 2. Okay. Waffles or pancakes?
Oh, waffles.
Pancakes.
Grape Suzette.
Pancakes.
Maple
Grape
Pancakes.
Suzette.
Oh, good.
Pancakes all the way.
Maple butter and bacon.
Pancakes with maple syrup. Mhm.
That's great.
I think we should do one more for
Better clean up after pancakes.
All
I'll just ask one more. Let's just get it out the way.
right.
Okay.
Okay. And the prompt is, what is your opinion on re-gifting gifts?
Yes.
Yes.
I do that. I do that all the time.
Yes. Great idea.
Oh, welcome to whatever.
My cousin once re-gifted something I gave to her husband to me.
Not a good idea.
I thought it was hilarious.
All right. So thanks for engaging in that, Kyle. You're an awesome host. I think you've got a whole nother thing you can do if this doesn't work out.
I'm here all afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. So let's get into restorative justice now that we've connected a little bit and we had some fun and built a little bit of community and learned about if we like waffles or pancakes and so forth, let's talk about restorative justice. Restorative justice, there is no single origin of restorative justice. There is no single person or group of people that you can point towards that invented it. It is something that's based on ancestral traditions and indigenous traditions. And if you look around the world, you'll see different indigenous communities, including all of our ancestors in the past, who practiced some form of restorative justice in the sense that they built community with each other and then depended on that community to respond to harm or conflict if it happened, or to support individuals that needed it. And so let's just go through a few examples so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. In New Zealand, the Maori people, who are the native people in New Zealand, the Aboriginal people there, they convinced their government to do a series of listening sessions because their youth were overrepresented in the justice system. They were being arrested disproportionately than the other people in New Zealand, the other white youth in New Zealand. So they, after this series of listening sessions, they convinced their government to do something that was based on their tribal methods of responding to harm, wrongdoing. And they came up with something they called family group conferencing in New Zealand. And basically what happened is they brought together the youthful offender and their support people, the person or people they harmed, other people like members of law enforcement and a facilitator, and they just talked about what happened and what the impact has been. And also the person or the people who've been harmed got to ask questions like, why me? Or what led you to do this? Or what happened to you? You know, simple questions that typically people who've been a victim of a crime don't get to ask. And they were an equal participant in this process. And they would come up with a plan to repair the harm or to make it right or to fix it as best as possible. And what they discovered was that what you might call victim satisfaction with the process, people who've been harmed, their satisfaction with the process went way up. And the recidivism rates, or the reoffending rates of the youth who had committed the crimes, admitted to doing it, went way down. And they've managed to close many of their youth incarceration facilities in New Zealand as a result. So not without challenges or problems, but very successful there. Here in this country, the Navajo people, the native people, they call themselves Dene. They don't even have a word for offender in their language. The phrase they use is one who acts as if they have no family. So one who does not feel connected to community, in other words. The same up in the Nisga'a Nation, up in British Columbia and Canada, First Nations people in Canada, the word they use is unhealed. So someone who hurts another person, they refer to them as unhealed, because only someone who's experienced harm would hurt another person, because hurt people, which is another concept in restorative justice. So a few other are the concept of ahimsa, which is a Sanskrit word in India, which means nonviolence or do no harm. The same in the Jewish tradition, the concept of tikkun olam, which stands for repairing the world or reparations in the world. And then, of course, in South Africa, many of you might remember apartheid. And post-apartheid, they had a process called truth and reconciliation. Some of you also might remember Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, Robben Island prison, and he came out to become the president of South Africa. And instead of punishing the oppressors, they set up truth-telling, and telling stories was healing. And so all these are examples of restorative justice and kind of the difference between a culture that's maybe more punitive, punishment-based, and one that is more based in community and then uses that community to repair harm. So you can begin to see that restorative justice is more about healing when harm has happened rather than punishment. And Kyle, I'll pass it on to you for this next one.
Thanks, David. So what we're showing now is the 7 core assumptions, or what we believe to be true in restorative practices. We interchange restorative justice and restorative practice because in some communities, there is a belief that there is no justice. So we say restorative practices, specifically with the indigenous people. But I want you to read, we have 1 through 7 core assumptions. The first one is the true self in everyone is good, wise, and powerful. The second one is the world is profoundly interconnected. Number 3, all human beings have a deep desire to be in a good relationship. Number 4, all human beings have gifts and everyone is needed. Number 5, everything we need to make positive change is already here. 6, human beings are holistic. And 7, we need practices to build habits of living from the core self. So what I want you to do is just kind of look at these 7. If you have your iPhone or Android, you can take a picture of it real quick. Or if you want to write it down, that's totally fine. But I want you to think about which one of these 7 stands out to you the most, okay? So which one resonates with you the most that you're like, I totally, wholeheartedly believe in this belief or this assumption. I'll give you about maybe 1 minute to go through these and write the one down that resonates with you the most, or if you want to take a picture of that, that's totally fine. And after that, we're going to break you out into breakout groups to discuss which one you chose and why did it resonate with you so much.
So Jake, we're going to be putting people in breakout groups of 4. For how long, Kyle?
I believe about 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Breakout groups of 4 for 5 minutes.
All right. Can we do a couple share outs, David? Yeah. Would anybody like to share out?
Argentine. This is Argentine. I like to share out.
Go ahead, Miss Argentine.
Okay. I was in a group, let's see, room 11. And in the room with me were Emil, I'm blocking Emil's last name, Volchek from Baltimore Ethical Society. And Sonia didn't get her location, but she came in to the room, and I was in the room. The 3 of us. We only had 3 in our group. And Emil had selected a true self, relationships that he felt was important. He selected that one. And Sonia and I selected that the world is probably interconnected. And talked about our experiences in being in that space of feeling, and not only feeling, but being in a world that's interconnected. And Emil said that yes, but there are also divisions and part of start pulling apart from that interconnectivity. So that was us from room 11.
Thank you, room 11. Much appreciated. We'll just do one more just for time purposes. One more if anybody would like to share out. All right, Nick Sanders.
Yeah, I think we started with the feeling like everybody had something to offer, number 4, and that was very important to get to that. We disagreed about whether people were seeking good relationships, though, altogether. We seemed to be very selective about that and recognizing it was important to have some good relationships, but we didn't know everybody would do that. And then we also had the profoundly interconnected, number 2, as being that there was a person, Rochelle from Austin, and Tasha from, I don't know where, but I didn't get that. But anyway, I hope I did justice to what we do.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you both for sharing out
Okay.
great groups.
Mhm.
All right. Moving forward.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about healing and restorative justice being a healing form of justice. Now we're going to talk about the difference between restorative justice when we're talking about the criminal justice system or dealing with harm in our current system. You might call it a retributive system, the one we have now. Right now, currently, when someone commits a crime or they engage in some kind of wrongdoing, whether it's in the criminal justice system or in schools, discipline system, we really just ask about three questions. And they are, what law was broken, who did it, and then what are we going to do to them? You know, are they going to be on probation? Are they going to jail? You know, what's going to happen to them? It's very offender centric. So it's focused on the person who did the harm rather than the person who'd been harmed. If any of you have been a victim of a crime and had to go through the court system, you might report feeling sort of confused or left out of the process, not really a part of it because it's so focused on the offender. In restorative justice, we're not as concerned about the law that was broken or say the rule that was broken. What we're concerned about is the harm that was done. Like, where was the fracturing of relationships? Where was the fabric of our community torn and how? And every harm creates needs, not just to the person or the people who've been harmed, but for the person who did the harm. Because remember, I said harmed people harm people. And so there is a root cause that caused this person to harm another person or a group of people. So every harm creates needs and reveals needs, you might say. And then there's obligations to make it right, you know, to repair that harm in some way, to create healing. And then the question is, how should we all come together to do that? And in restorative justice, we often will use a circle process, which is a process where we all sit in a circle. There's no table. There's just like a cloth on the ground with some objects on it that are important to the community. And we'll pass around a talking piece where one person gets to speak or pass at a time. And we'll talk about what happened and what was going through people's minds at the time and how they feel about it now. What's been the impact of what happened and what's been difficult, and ultimately what can be done to make it right. And so it's about harms, needs, and obligations rather than who broke the law and what are we going to do to them. And the reason we are thinking in this way is because when you think about harm, you are thinking about true accountability, because when someone does something to another person, to hold them accountable or for them to hold themselves accountable would mean that they would provide some sort of healing to that person or even to themselves or to the community and to the community. To just be punished or excluded from society or sent away, sometimes that needs to happen, but it doesn't really create any way of making it right. It just sends that person away. And so we believe that justice needs to be healing. So real restorative justice is not soft. In fact, it's very difficult to do this. And I've seen people prefer to remain on probation than go through this process. Imagine sitting in a circle after you've hurt somebody and you're sitting there across from the people that you've hurt. Your grandmother is sitting there next to you, or people that you care about are sitting there next to you, and you have to admit what you've done and be accountable. That's very, very hard. And you can only do that if you truly are willing to be accountable for your actions. And again, harm people. So justice needs to heal. So this is kind of when you see these two side by side, these two sets of questions, you can really get an understanding of what restorative justice is like. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just want to see if people feel free to say in the chat if you have any questions or if anything's coming up for you right now, or you need clarification on anything, now would be a good time for us to do that. or you could raise your hand. You could, Zia, go ahead, unmute and say
I'm
what you
just
think.
wondering, in what situations do you think restorative justice does not work?
Mm-hmm. Zia, the person, if you're talking about a form of restorative justice where someone who's done a harm to another person, and they're not willing to be accountable to that harm that they've done, then you're not going to bring them together with that person, because the last thing you want to do is cause more harm. So what I've been talking about right here is a form of restorative justice where someone who harms a person speaks with the person that they've harmed. But there's, as you'll see, as we get through this, there's a lot more to restorative justice than just that one process. In fact, one of our hopes today is that you come out of this understanding that the primary example of restorative justice would be just to build community as a process for building community, so that when you restore harm, you're restoring harm to a community that is solid, that cares about each other, that is connected in via their relationships. And so there's things have to be in place
Is
to
just
do this.
the acknowledgement of harm sufficient to satisfy
No.
the person who's been
No,
harmed?
so there's going to be a whole process by which a facilitator would engage with the people on both sides to determine whether it's appropriate or not to bring them together. And sometimes this process won't happen till 20, 25 years after the harm has happened. And it's more of a victim offender dialogue after years of prep work. Sometimes it happens in a school the next day. It depends on the type of harm. And sometimes it doesn't happen, and people who've been harmed and people who do the harm will have separate circles to support them in healing and in their own accountability. So this is it's a big philosophy, and it has a large set of practices that go with it. So but it's a good question.
Yeah, but there are circumstances in which it really doesn't work, and then you have to resort to the current system or whatever other means
Correct.
you might have.
That is correct, Zia. Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard a lecture about this in a library, in the local library, in which they said that in the juvenile situation, it works very nicely, because then the families of the juvenile get involved, and it has a different kind of dynamic instead of having adults involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does work with juveniles, and there have been a lot of programs that work with juveniles. I have also seen it work with adults as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to, because of time, and I appreciate the question, because of our timing, us only having an hour and a half for this whole thing, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to take a little break and just give you a chance to do what you need to do and come back. It says 5-minute break. I'm going to say, because of time, we're going to take a 3-minute break. I hope that's okay with you. So it's, well, in Oakland, it's 4:49. For some of you, it might be 5:49, 6:49, 7:49. We're going to come back in 3 minutes. So feel free to turn off your screen if you want, and then come back when you're ready after 3 minutes. Thank you. Kyle, are you back here?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Let's hit up the next one then.
All right. So welcome back, human person leaders. So there are 3 tiers of restorative justice, restorative practices that we like to go through. The first is relational. So community building and talking circles. So basically everything, what we just started basically is kind of like the beginning. We did an opening, and then we had you all talk to each other as a check-in, like your name, where you're at, and what you learn about community. I want to go to the chat for a quick sec. Somebody asked a question, and I think this kind of relates to it. And it's like, when does RJ create a risk re-injuring or re-traumatizing a victim? I believe that was email.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the deal. I can ask any question as a check-in question, and it could be traumatizing. You never know what question you're going to ask a person that's going to create trauma. here, example, you know, if I say, what's your favorite holiday? And a lot of people go, oh, Christmas is my favorite holiday, right? Well, somebody in that group is like, we didn't have a lot of money. I never got gifts. We were homeless during Christmas of many years, you know, you just don't know. So any question can, at the end of the day, can bring trauma. And what we do is we keep things as light as possible, but you just never know. But we do check in with that person if we do see that some sort of trauma may have been caused based on a question that we ask, just to make sure that the person can continue on the day, but they may need a little bit of time. We also do a lot of prep work, which is kind of going into the repair part of this slide where it says repair harm and conflict circles. We never say, so if for instance, Miss Ella McBride and Jackie Sims got into a fight or argument, we would never say, let's have y'all talk right now. Absolutely not. Because there are people who need time and space. As I like to say, time and water heals wounds. We need time and space. There needs to be a check-in and talk to the individuals who have gone through whatever has occurred. So I need to check in with Miss McBride for a minute and say, hey, like, what happened? How are you feeling? How has Jackie been treating you since this occurred? What would you like? What do you need? And I would ask the exact same questions to Jackie so that we're all on the same page, but also I can hear, as a facilitator, I can hear all the things that are either bothering or the miscommunication. I can hear all of these things, i.e. Repairing, but also going through the whole prep process. So I'm not going to bring two people or a group of people together without talking to everybody individually, because sometimes people leave things out, and I figure out there's different perceptions, and perceptions and miscommunication lead to a lot of conflict in the world. And as I leave repair, the restore piece, that is more of reentry. So in circles of support and accountability, those are individuals who have possibly been incarcerated. Those are people who have been involuntarily moved. That might be someone who is new to the community, someone who's returning to the community, things of that nature. So ultimately, the relational piece, the repair piece, and the restorative piece. And David and myself, we always like the relational piece, because once you build a positive community and positive relationship, you know that if you do something to somebody who you already know and care about that hurts them, that you already know that whatever action you've caused is going to harm them. And we want to make sure that everybody knows where individuals stand in whatever walk of life, so that we don't have to repair any harm, and that we have all the things we need to have positive relationships.
Yeah, I want to build on that, Kyle. When you're in a community, the relate part should be 95% of the RJ work that you're doing, the restorative practices work that you're doing. So you are doing circles to connect with each other, to create some shared values together, to find out who each other are, and build those relationships. And when you do that, that becomes the foundation for the repair work. So I know, you know, when we talk about RJ, sometimes the focus is on, you know, the like crime and bringing people together that have committed just heinous crimes. But the fact is, restorative justice mainly is about creating opportunities for building relationships and connections with a community of people. Kyle, I'll pass it to you for this next slide here too.
Awesome. So that the slide previously was more the relational. So we do community buildings. We talk. We do talking circles. Or have that one-to-one dialogue. There's learning circles, whether it be in universities, whether it be in different communities, to discuss different things going on in the community. Celebrations, definitely. So if someone comes in, it's a birthday, or it's someone who, you know, has completed maybe a degree or some sort of accomplishment. You know, we definitely want to celebrate, have everybody speak about all the positive things this individual has done and how proud we are of their accomplishment. And definitely decision making. And something that if you attend our session on next Friday or Saturday, we have our guidelines, which are community agreed upon rules. So if one person doesn't agree upon this guideline, then we cannot have it as a community. Everybody must make the decision to have to agree upon these guidelines that we're going to be in person together or be together. We hold each other accountable for these guidelines, i.e. making that decision to hold these guidelines in place. Moving over to harm and conflict, that is more of when a harm or conflict has occurred. We'll link up together. There's also community conferencing, where like individuals who have been harmed will sit together and discuss, what has occurred, almost like the AA meetings that someone mentioned in the chat, the 12-step programs or whatnot. And then lastly, the support or grief or reentry or welcome circles. Those are more of a single person who might need that support, or it could be multiple people, but we like to make it more of a individual. That grief when people, someone has been murdered or someone has passed away, we definitely want to have that conversation going around. And like I said, the reentry piece, if somebody's been incarcerated and coming back into the community or not.
All right, thank you, Kyle. So now you're getting an idea of the different types of processes or the different types of applications for RJ in a community, moving from the proactive to the responsive. What I want to do now is we want to offer this video. So this is a video that was shot in one of our high schools, and it shows restorative justice in a school community. So it's not just about repairing harm. It's about building and maintaining community, and providing opportunities to repair harm, and then also for individualized support. So you're going to see this here. And the reason we're showing you this is because we're hoping that afterwards we can have a conversation around transposing this into another community, such as your community, the societies, and or any other community that you might be a part of. So I'm going to invite you to watch this video, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
So come on in, everyone. Take a seat. So welcome to Circle. We have a few guidelines to keep us going. So what we're doing today is a community building circle. It is a tier 1 practice in restorative justice. We do tier 1 circles to build community, to connect with each other, to practice speaking and listening in a different way. Say their name, say their name. Okay, what does the word say? Go ahead, what does that mean to you?
What I saw was missing is 100% of your community feeling part of the community. At many high schools, including this one, I think there was a group of people who feel like they were the community, and then everyone else was kind of left out.
My name is Midori. On a scale from 1 to 10, I'm feeling like a 7. How are you feeling from 0 to 10?
Restorative justice, we just come to a place where we hear every person's side of the story. Before I knew about RJ, I was a tough girl, like always fighting, getting into conflict. Like I was the one always fighting, going to the office, getting reflections, getting suspended. And then now, like, I see where other people come from, and I'd be like, okay, well, don't do this, we can do this another way.
In Oakland Unified, we use a 3-tier system. So tier 1 are the practices that pretty much everybody should be doing all the time. It's relationships, that's the glue that holds us together. And when things break down, we do tier 2, so it's a triangle. Tier 2, there are fewer interventions. Ideally, there are fewer interventions. Those would be mediations, harm circles, conflict circles. And then tier 3, at the top of the pyramid, ideally should be the fewest that we do, but that's when a student has had to be removed, and we reintegrate them through a welcome and reentry process. And what I want to ask you is to share a time when you feel like your voice wasn't heard. Can you use your voice as a young person in Oakland? Go ahead.
For me personally, I feel like youth, we can't do anything about it. For example, like voting, like we didn't want Trump, but we couldn't do anything about it because we can't vote because we're not old enough.
One time, I felt like my voice wasn't being heard because I was like really little, and these people had like robbed the store or whatever, and I saw the whole thing, but the people that was like doing the robbery wasn't paying attention to me because I was like a little girl. So I tried to tell the people what happened, and they didn't listen to me.
This room just to sit in here is quiet, so it's like a peaceful space. Outside of school is not like that for everybody.
My name is Monica, and I'm feeling like a 6.
What restorative justice provides that traditional school discipline methods do not is the chance for people to take responsibility and understand the impact of their actions on others. It's internally driven. It has to be because I understand that there was something that I did that broke a bond here, and that this breakage is connected to other breakages that make all of us as a community weaker. The expectation of people to take responsibility for their actions is the way forward. I mean, that's the magic. That's the revolution that needs to happen.
I appreciate him for being I appreciate Spencer because he always in a good mood every day.
When I did the grief circle, I needed to talk to somebody. Because my mom passed away my 9th grade year when I was here. So all that weight that was on me, I told them. But at the end, I finally cried. I let everything go. And that's what the best thing was. That was the best thing that happened in like 2-3 years.
We're being a good friends.
Appreciate friendship playing basketball with.
For it to be this space, which is school, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Community just doesn't happen because you put people together and they're in one building. It happens because we talk, because we listen, because we worry about each other, we care about each other. When they are in conflict, they need help. They don't need us to just push them out. They need us to bring them in.
I appreciate my Dory for listening.
There's a wider understanding from the school community that RJ can be used preventatively.
She's just a cool person to deal with.
You have a good personality and a very bright sense of humor.
As a tool for community building and a tool for learning. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. So it's not just to deal with behavior issues. It precedes that as well. It precedes it, it's after it, and it's all around it. And that's the whole point, is that when we find that we have more in common with each other than not, we'll be able to get along, we'll be able to learn, we'll be more peaceful and equitable with each other.
Okay, thank you for watching that video. And I know that was in a school context, but school is a community and is similar to other communities in that sense. And so Kyle and I are curious about what's sticking with you after watching that video. And is there anything that's resonating with you now that you've seen it and you're thinking about your community? And Jake, we're going to ask you to put people in breakout groups of two or three people, and you'll have about 4 minutes in your breakout group. Yeah. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully had a rich discussion and that sparked some good conversation. I heard some here. I was in a breakout room with Joanna. That was really nice. And we're going to, let's see, move on here. I'm going to share my screen again in the interest of time. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk briefly about applications for restorative justice. It's not just for schools. It's not. It's basically for wherever people are, human beings, where we gather in community. It's used in schools. Schools are a community. They're a community of learners. It's used in community-based organizations like nonprofits. It can even be used in the corporate world, in the workplace. It's certainly used in the criminal justice system. We talked a little bit about that earlier around the difference between a retributive criminal justice system and a restorative one, the workplace, and in faith-based organizations. Interestingly enough, one of the first authors in the US to write about restorative justice was a person named Howard Zarek, who is Mennonite. And his book, Changing Lenses, because he's also a photographer, but his book, Changing Lenses, has a lot of references to his faith in it and how restorative justice connects to his faith as a Mennonite. So restorative justice, it's not just specifically for one group of people or one type of group of people or even just about harm. It's a thread that can weave through all different kinds of organizations and all different kinds of communities as a way of being together in a healthy and just way. We believe justice is not just about repairing harm. Just a just community is a healthy community. So we have an expanded notion of what justice is. And I want to move on to this next slide. Now, this is a chart. I know there's a lot of words on there and boxes, and it's going to make sense to you in a few minutes. This is a chart that shows you the different ways to respond to an incident, right? And so you can see on the up and down, the y-axis, if you're in a community, a group of people that are gathered together for a certain reason, and you have expectations for how to do things, you've got norms for how to do things, systems are in place for how to do things. You could call that the culture, positive rituals and traditions that you have that keep the community cohesive. On the x-axis on the bottom, you'll see that's being in relationship with each other. And you might refer to that as the climate, like how it feels when you walk into the community space, right? That's support, empathy, encouragement. And so if you look at the bottom right, 4, if there's a lot of support, but very little or no expectations or systems in place, that would be characterized as permissive or doing for people, right? So if you're making excuses for someone's behavior, you're doing things for them. If you have no support, no relational content, no encouragement, and no systems to speak of in your organization, then that would be characterized as neglectful or not. You're basically avoiding contact or communication or accountability. If all you have are rules and systems and expectations, but no relational content, no support, no empathy, no encouragement, that would be characterized as doing to, right? The person who's being done to has no agency in the process. So the restorative way to be, a community that practices restorative practices or restorative justice would be a community that does with each other. In other words, there are systems and expectations in place. There are norms. There are positive rituals and traditions that are predictable and that happen regularly. And that's done with relationships being intact, where there's a focus on connection and care and even love. And so that would be the restorative mindset. Now, all of us are all over this chart, depending on who we're talking with, how we're feeling that day, how much sleep we got, how much food we just ate. We're all over this chart. The idea, though, is that when you're thinking about your range of response to any kind of incident or any kind of thing that happens, you're going to fall somewhere in here. And the restorative way to be, if you can, would be with, and that takes time and building of community. So hopefully that makes sense to you now that I kind of went over that. But we want to be with, We want to try to do two less. Sometimes you have to do two. We want to try and not be neglectful, and we want to not be permissive as much as possible. We want to be with, which would be the restorative way of doing things. Okay, now I'm going to move, let's see, to the next. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to give you all a chance now to make meaning of everything that we've talked about. It's 5:19 here in Oakland, California. It's 8:19 where you are. We have about 10 minutes left. So our question for you is, now that you've heard about restorative justice and you've learned about it as a way to build community and maintain that community, as a way to respond to harm or conflict within the community, and as a way to provide an individualized support for people that need it in the community, in what ways can you see this philosophy and practice being used in your community, in the movement, or in your society, if at all? And just spend some time, think about that. If you feel like you need to write it down first and then answer it, go ahead and put that in the chat. And we would love to see your answers. In what way can you see this philosophy and practice being used in the movement or in your society? Help rebuild community as a way to heal and come together. Inclusive, making sure it's inclusive, that 100% of the community feels part of the community. That's important. Training is important, absolutely. Restorative justice can be done wrong, for sure. And I've definitely seen that, says Kyle, as a way to apologize. Interest circles. Interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. Incorporating in the community relations committee, making sure everyone's heard. Yeah, this is great. Well, thank you for thinking about this. It's been a pleasure working with you and talking with you. Hopefully some of you can make our day-long trainings next week. I'm going to share a quote with you. I'm going to ask if there's someone that would like to read this quote. Is there someone that would like to come off mute and read this quote for us?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. Miller Williams.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Read really well. So, Kyle, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll just say a little bit. I know we showed the video of schools, of RJ Circle in schools. I feel like many of us were taught when we were younger that a child stays in their place, and when adults speak, they speak, and a child is to go somewhere else or whatnot and not respond or whatever like that, go away. But now, since COVID has hit, all those baby humans were with adults 24 hours a day. And they have a better sense of what adults go through, which they should not have, but they saw a lot. And so with that, just know that the young people are a part of our society, and they see more, and they endure a lot of trauma based on what their families are going through, because they know about politics, religion, deportation, crime in the community, murder, loss of life, and whatnot. And it deeply impacts them. And so with that, the same thing that we go through as adults, our baby humans go through that as well. And they need somewhere to be able to let that out. And all the things that are let out in society, I promise you, is in the schools. Homelessness hits the schools. Drugs hit the schools. Sex hits the schools. So that just being said, that the young people are part of our society, whether we think that, oh, they don't go through the things we go through. That's not true anymore. They go through the same things we go through and have the same feelings we go through. And I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody was like, well, why are they showing these school things? It's the exact same thing. They're just younger and learning how to deal with life at a way younger age. And they start at probably about as young as 4 or 5 years old, experiencing the things that we as adults experience. And it's unfortunate that society has created this this experience for our youth. With that being said, I'm complete. Super happy that you all had us join today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week, June 9th or June 10th.
Thank you, Anya, Rachel, and Jake for supporting this. Appreciate all of you. Thank you all for attending and for spending time with us. Appreciate it. Thank you.